Hello, thank you for tuning in and welcome to another episode of the Modern Day Slave Podcast. I'm your host, Nikia Anderson, and I am super excited to get into this episode. This is episode number 8. That's right. I don't know where the time went to, but yeah, we're at 8 episodes already in, and I have a special guest for this particular episode. So I'm super excited to be able to bring you this episode. Now, I've titled the name of this particular episode Community Conversations. This is a much needed conversation that needs to take place, especially since I've laid out in episodes 4, 5, and 6 the Willie Lynch Syndrome. And I wanted to bring in my brother and a guy that I've known majority of my life, whom I grew up with in the neighborhood in which I was born and raised in. Uh, Kalonji Benson, and I want to bring him in to just add some context to the conversation that we're going to have about community conversations. And you know, this is the very first episode that we're airing live. So for those that are tuning in, again, thank you for tuning in to this episode. I really appreciate it. I want to give a quick shout out before we jump into the conversation and before I bring my brother online to allow him to introduce himself. I want to give a quick shout out to my listeners that are in Canada, Mexico, the UK, the Philippines, most recently Ireland. Thank you all for tuning in, for listening, and thank you for your support as well as the feedback that you provided. Thanks to you all, I'm at a 5-star rating on Apple Podcasts right now with some really good and blessed comments. So thank you for listening. Thank you for tuning in. And I really appreciate you for being a part of the podcast. I also want to take this opportunity to welcome you to share. If anything that you've listened to from the Modern Day Slave podcast has really helped you to understand historical events and then how we apply those to modern application, if any of those things that we've discussed and talked about on the podcast have helped you, please share this video, like, comment, subscribe, and then download a copy of the episodes as well. That's how we continue to increase the reach in which we have to be able to bring people this content. So that being said, I am going to take this opportunity to bring my brother who really needs no introduction. I'm going to allow him to come on and step up and just, say a few words and introduce himself for the listeners that are out there that may not be familiar with this brother. So let me bring him in. All right. We've got him in.
All right.
Shalom, brother. How are you?
I'm good, brother. Peace and blessings. And peace and
Man,
blessings to everybody out there across the nation, in the world. And uh, it's good to be here, man. It's a blessing and an honor.
Yeah, man, I wanted to thank you for stepping into this and just having this conversation because this is a much needed conversation. Our people, our nation, the planet is suffering as a result of a lot of things that were laid out from the Willie Lynch syndrome. A lot of people do not know that this is one of the most emblematic speeches and methods that were used here in the Americas, but has been spread worldwide. And so I really appreciate you for stepping in the arena to really have this conversation as we take a look and we focus on community. Right now, a lot of people would say that, as a nation, we're really struggling with the racism that is deeply embedded and rooted into the operation of our society. And to that, I would say, hey, if we can't get the nation to start a truthful and a meaningful conversation around these things, it is time for us to start doing. And so, if we can't look to the nation, let's look to the community. So let's talk to the community and really focus on, things that we can do. So that being said, man, I want to give you the floor and let you introduce yourself to the listeners, for our listeners that are, not only here in the nation, but also worldwide. Tell them a little bit about yourself and a little bit about, who you are. Tell them what you want them to know.
Well, my name is Kalonji Benson. Uh, I'm a native of Arkansas, born and raised. Like he said, we grew up together right there in a small community that was divided. We were divided already. So you have two sides of town where you're from. You had the white, like side of town, and you had the black side of town. Right there. And it was a big division growing up. And most of the time we stayed on our side, they stayed on their side besides school and sports and things like that. But uh, you know, with all that being said, uh, I became a victim of society. At some point in time, as far as getting into the world and uh, playing a role in the Willie Lynch Syndrome and things like that. And I would say that, this is a conversation that, needs to be had, and not just had, but done, something done about it, you know. But uh, just growing up, just give you a little background. I come from a humble beginnings. My family um, started one of the first black-owned businesses in Arkansas. For years there, we were the only black-owned nursing home in the Arkansas area. And, that started a while back in the 50s.
There we go. We
when,
got you back.
okay. Did I fade out?
Yeah, you fade out for just a second.
Okay. Yeah, I was just giving a little history on my family, black owned business in Arkansas, first nursing home in that area. And it started out that, they wouldn't let blacks come to the hospital and get proper service. So my great grandmother, what she did was she started seeing the black patients in her home. And it just spawned from there. She had so many patients coming and things like that that she was able to, her and my great grandfather were able to come together and put together a nursing home that started as a black hospital. And it went on for years, and unfortunately, it was closed down in 2008. And but, the legacy lives on. But, I've been a community activist, I would say, for 20 plus years. I'll say unpopular community activist. I know a lot of times some people may think of an activist as out front, in the public and being seen and, on television and things like that. But, I like to put my feet on the ground and, really engage with the people. It was a lot of killings going on down in our neighborhood and things like that. And a friend of mine, Nicky Hill, he was killed, and it really sparked a real concern about, really getting involved and finding out, what's the real uh, solution to uh, this racism and things like that. He was killed by the police, and so it really just sparked something in me, that has been going on for years now. Uh, I'm happy to help with my wife. She has a nonprofit, and we try to serve the community best way we can. And if you guys ever want to go in and uh, contribute or donate or uh, lend your services for volunteer work and things like that, look it up on Family Community Outreach. That's on Facebook and I believe Instagram and maybe Twitter, but definitely Facebook, Family Community Outreach. Um, you can go in and, just do what you can and try to help as much as you can. But we're constantly just trying to uplift and uh, push forward our people, in any way possible. Because that's what it's all about. You got to get out and you got to do the works. And then you got to let God do the rest. So that's pretty much me in a nutshell. I'm a pretty simple person. I love my people. I care about my people. Um, I like to get in depth into the situation so that I can come up with or get with like-minded people, and we can come up with a great solution to try to stop what's going on and start something that needs to be happening. So that's me.
Welcome to the Modern Day Slave podcast. See, the new slavery in these days is mind control. If you control the mind, you can control the people. This podcast is dedicated to the re-education and awareness of our modern influences through the examination of current and historical circumstances that have led to conditions that we now live. Welcome to your freedom. Of current and historical circumstances that have led so I appreciate you for, introducing yourself. You talked a little bit about, that community outreach, man, and I think that's super important. You also spoke about, what your family did to start what started as a hospital, right? In the community, man, and served for years upon years in the community that we grew up in. And man, you mentioned something about how our community was set up. See, the little town that we grew up in was widely divided amongst racial lines. A lot of people didn't know that, but yeah, the little town of Nashville, Arkansas was widely divided amongst racial lines. And we grew up in that side of town that's called, what we call New Edition. Ironically, that's what they called it, right? But yet, myself, I grew up without running water until the age of about 7 or so. You know what I mean? So I appreciate you again for, introducing yourself and, man, stepping into this conversation. So before we really get started, and I want to dialogue with you about some things that you've mentioned, and also about some things that that are important as it relates to the conversation that we're about to have. I want to give a little bit of context by just really reading some of Willie Lynch's speech, just a small segment to help provide a little bit of context, and then we'll talk about some of the conversation that we want to have. To provide context to the speech, I left off with talking about Willie Lynch, man. For those who don't know who Willie Lynch is the same person whom we derived the modern day term lynching from. So if you think about what is transpiring still in this world today, if you think about Ronald Green, for example, right? The 2019 video that just was released this year, that's a classic example of what we call lynching. If you think about what happened to Ahmaud Arbery, that's a classic example of what we call lynching. So this is something that's still taking place in this modern day term. And so William Lynch was actually summoned here to the banks of the James River in Virginia on December 25th was the date that he stepped foot on the banks of the James River, 1712. And William Lynch was summoned to give a speech because he had successfully tested out the newest forms of slave control on his slaves on his plantation in the West Indies. So I want to read just a quick snippet from his speech so that you can understand a little bit of the context in which this conversation is really going to go into as we dive into this particular community conversation. So I'm going to start with page 1. And here's what Lynch says, and I quote, he says, "In my bag here, I have a foolproof method of controlling your black slaves." Now, as I continue to read this, there are some derogatory terms. The N word, I don't use it personally. So as it comes up, I will replace it with black slave, because that is who he was referring to at the time. Okay. So he says, "In my bag here, I have a foolproof method of controlling your black slaves. I guarantee every one of you that if installed correctly, it will control the slaves for at least 300 years. My method is simple. Any member of your family or your overseer can use it. I have outlined a number of differences amongst the slaves to make the differences bigger. I use fear, distrust, and envy to control." He says, and he continues, "The black slaves, after receiving this indoctrination, shall carry on and will become self-refueling and self-generating for hundreds of years, maybe thousands. Don't forget, you must pitch the old black male versus the young black male, and the young black male against the old black male. You must use the dark-skinned slave versus the light-skinned slaves, and the light-skinned slaves against the dark-skinned slaves. You must use the female and the male against the female. You must also have your white servants and overseers distrust all blacks. It is necessary that your slaves trust and depend on us. They must love, respect, and trust only us. Gentlemen, these kits are your keys to control. Use them. Have your wives and children use them. Never miss an opportunity. If used intensely for 1 year, the slaves themselves will remain perpetually distrustful of each other. So, with that snippet read, here's the first question I want to throw out there to you, Kalonji. What are some of the impacts that we see of Willie Lynch syndrome / slavery in today's society?
Man, that was powerful. Just what you said, just everything that you read off. But I would say, on a small scale, I'm just going to go small for right now. On a small scale, you can see in today's society small things that may be happening that we do every day, that we live, that's in our culture, that's around us all the time, that we don't even recognize that we're doing. That's all a part of everything that Willie Lynch brought to the forefront. Like, let's just say, the blacker you are, the more hated you are. The bigger your lips are, the more hated you are. The brighter you are, the more hated you are. That's a division. And, we use it as joking terms now and everything, but really you suffer growing up, with these things happening. The term good hair, oh, he has good hair, and she has nappy hair. And all those things are psychologically affecting us in such a way that it's almost normalized to us, that we use these terms and we degrade each other, and we fight and we envy and we're jealous of each other for certain things that were all God given, and he used those things as a tool, and now basically we're just running on autopilot. So not only the blacker you are, but the brighter you are. The closer you are to white, the more people think that you're uppity, and that you're soft and weak. And the darker you are, the people try to say, well, he's a strong black man. He's stronger. The blacker you are, ooh, look at your black self. People use it as a derogatory term, and all these things are just part of our human development, and the way that we look, and the way that we sound, and that's just on a small level.
Yeah, and I want you to think about this too. So we think about the other side of that too, right? So as Willie Lynch laid out in just that little small snippet, keep in mind this is a 4-page speech that he did, and I'm just simply taking small segments from the first piece. There's a lot more in it. I would highly encourage anyone who has not looked at or read this speech to dive into the full thing. But as we, examine what he laid out, you talked about the black community, right? Or the, I'll call it the African American community, or
Right.
The darker complected community, right? The people of color. So in our community, you laid out, some of the principles of how we operate, right? So you think about this, who's the greatest, those types of arguments that we get into, oh, he's the GOAT, this and that, and then talking about, oh, well, that's light skin stuff. You know what I mean? That those type of comments that we use, we don't even realize that in our own community, we are fueling exactly what Willie Lynch said would happen. He said, for 300 years, he said, if we do it successfully, he said, if you do it for 1 year, now we know that slavery took place, according to his story. I'll call it his story because the reality is it was taking place before 1619. So the first slaves, though, were said to be brought to the banks of Virginia and dropped off in 1619. Well, slavery took place all the way up to the 1860s. So he said, though, if you do his methods for just 1 year, that they would control themselves for thousands of years. He said for hundreds, maybe even 1,000 years. And that's exactly what that is. So you laid that out. I want you to think about this perspective too and talk to us a little bit about this perspective, right? What happens on the other side of that coin? Because he mentioned that, your slave drivers and your family members, if they follow these methods as well, what happens to them on that side?
You're kind of breaking up a little bit. Can you say that again?
Yeah. So, I was talking about the fact that Willie Lynch said that, the methods of controlling the slave, if you introduce them for 1 year, just 1 year, if you did them for 1 year. Now, we know slavery took place for years upon years upon years. But he said for just 1 year, if you do it for 1 year successfully, that if you do it, they would control themselves. That this was a method that would control themselves. On the other side of that coin, slavery wasn't just about the slave. The slave master had a family. He had overseers. And he said that you want to make sure that they also understand these methods and that they also practice these methods. So talk to me a little bit about what happens on that side of the spectrum. So they're told to treat the slaves this certain way. What does that create? What does that behavior create?
Well, it creates a system. It creates a system that everybody's on the same page. That let's just use, for example, that a slave is not allowed to read. So everyone that's part of the slave master's family or workers or whatever, they understand that if they catch a slave reading or anything like that, or that he's to be punished, and it's to be brought to the attention of the punishers or the slave master or whatever. And you have a system of where everything is, like I said, on the same page. You got everybody working together to create this system that is supposed to keep revolving and revolving and revolving. You can't have two heads on the master. You can only have one thing going on. And, that's how you keep things going on, just like a job. Once you go in there, they have a system that's going on that keeps the business running smoothly. And it's the same concept.
Yeah. So from that perspective, the opposite of what had happened with the slaves or the population of slaves happened with the slave master and their children and their descendants and the generations that came up after them, because they taught them that this is how you treated the slave, as Willie Lynch indoctrinated his methods into the culture and the society, that this is how they were taught to operate.
Right.
So that being said, no, go ahead.
I was just saying, yeah, it's just status quo. So, you may have some people that say, well, that was my grandparents and that was, my great grandparents. I didn't have anything to do with it or whatever. Well, the same way that Willie Lynch had this passed over to the slaves, it was the same thing for the slave master. So just like we were running on autopilot, the slave master's children and grandchildren and great grandchildren and everything are running on autopilot as well.
Yeah. What would you say to those who say that that we've come a long way from those olden days of the society of slavery and the institution of slavery? What would you say to those who say we've came a long way?
I would say, we have came a long way from when slavery was and everything like that. But as we evolve in time, the slavery evolves in time as well. We may have came a long way, but the slavery is still here, so it's not in a physical form because now it's against the law. Unless that, you're imprisoned or anything, and it's in the Constitution that you can be made a slave, that, you could work and labor without pay. But Um, I would say that now the chains are not on your feet; they're on your mind. It's a culture now. It's a way of living. I'm gonna take the chains off of your feet and I'm gonna put them on your mind, and then I'm gonna control you in the same way, but in a different form. Just like people used to store information on paper, now they store it in a computer. You know, it's the same game, just a different concept.
Yeah, I got you. I missed quite a bit of that, but I do understand where you were with that conversation though. So that being said,
Definitely, for those who asked the question, uh, the concept back in the day was a physical thing. People can't be physical and enslave you these days, so they have to use different tactics. And the part that Willie Lynch implemented in right now, the results are still here. The results are still in, and uh, people are running on autopilot. So now I don't have to necessarily separate you to turn you against your brother. I don't have to put the good hair people over here, and I don't have to separate people by color and things like that they used to do on the slave farms and plantations. Now, all I have to do is make a small narrative, maybe on Facebook or the internet, or nothing at all. It's just common nature. Like I said, a lot of people are just against themselves. When I say a lot of people, I'm speaking of black people a lot of times, but it does go all across the world. And the thing is, we have to be aware of these things. We have to take the time to consciously not only get the knowledge of it, but understand what's going on. Yeah, I was just trying to wrap up what I was saying.
again, I think you had some really good information that was shared there. We got a couple of people that are on that are commenting right now, so I see the comments that are out there, man. So I really appreciate it. So I want to go back to Willie Lynch's speech because you mentioned a few things that were super important about that understanding, right? You have some people that say that these things don't exist. You have some people that say that we've come so far and that we're not those same people. Yet this system that Willie Lynch created is what created the nature of the industrial prison complex. The industrial prison complex was created after that. You mentioned the 13th Amendment, right?
Right.
Well, the 13th Amendment has a clause in it that says that slavery is abolished with the exception of criminals. And then shortly after that, that is where you start to see the creation of laws that made it a crime to be black in America. I'm just going to lay it out there plain as I can state it, because when they created laws that made a poll tax, for example, on voting, right? So, who were they trying to exclude with the poll tax? When they made literacy tests, you mentioned the fact that the slaves were not allowed to read, right? If you were caught reading, there were two consequences that you could potentially have. One was you were given those lashings in front of the entire community, or two, you were killed, because they understood the significance of reading. I'm going to go back to Willie Lynch's speech. There's a few more snippets that I want to read, a few more excerpts that I want to take from that, because it provides context to the conversation that we're having and the dialogue we're having right now. So I'm going to jump just a little bit to page 2. This gets into the purpose and the intent behind slavery in the first place. So in page 2 of the speech, Willie Lynch talks about what really is the intent. Again, this is a snippet of the entire speech, so please go back and read the entire thing so you can truly understand it. But here's what he said, and I quote: "We understand that short-range planning economics results in periodic economic chaos." So what is he saying to us? We got to plan for longevity when creating this system that we're creating here, right? He says, so to avoid turmoil in the economy, it requires us to breathe and depth in long-range comprehensive planning, articulating both skill and sharp perceptions. Now, he continues here. I want to understand what he's going to get ready to lay out. We lay down the following principles for long-range comprehensive economic planning. Both the horse and the black slave is no good to the economy in the wild or natural state. Both must be broken and tied together in order for orderly production. For orderly future, special and particular attention must be paid to the female and the youngest offspring. So I want you to understand here where the target was. What was the target here? So he says particular attention must be paid to the female and the youngest offspring. So that is the woman and her children. Again, we're talking about family unit. This is a community conversation that we're having on this broadcast today. It says both must be crossbred to produce a variety and division of labor. Both must be taught to respond to a particular and peculiar new language. Psychologically and physical instruction of containment must be created for both. So notice he's saying you got to contain both, not only psychologically, but physically as well. We hold the 6 cardinal principles as truth to be self-evident based upon the following discourse concerning the economics of breaking and tying the horse and the black slave together, all inclusive of the 6 principles laid down about. Now, here's what he says. He says, neither principle alone, and this is a key note from the speech, neither principle alone will suffice for good economics. So you got to have all principles that he's saying, that he's laying out in this speech. They've got to be working hand in hand. They've got to work to keep the status quo. You mentioned systems a little bit earlier, Kalonji. That is what we're talking about here. He's indoctrinating the system. He says a belief discourse in offspring development will shed light on the key to sound economic principles. Pay little attention to the generation of original breaking, but concentrate on future generations. Notice what he's laying out there. Now, he mentioned the woman. I want to read this next piece, and then I'll get you to respond to a little bit of what he's saying here and how we can see this. Now, for my women that are out there listening to this broadcast, I want you to pay particular attention to what Lynch is laying out and what he says about the female and how we see these same behaviors play out in today's society. Here's what he says. He says, we have reversed the relationship. In her natural uncivilized state, she would have a strong dependency on the uncivilized black male slave. And she would have a limited protective tendency toward her independent male offspring and would raise the male offsprings to be dependent like her. Now, nature has provided for this type of balance. We reversed nature by burning and pulling the civilized black slave apart and bullwhipping the other in front to the point of death, all in her presence. See, this is what took place. If you've seen the series Roots, for those that know a little bit about this, this is what took place. If you've watched Nat Turner, if you've watched, any of those movies that kind of depict or tell the story of slavery, you've seen this transpiring. Even the series that's right now that's currently on Amazon Prime that's called Underground Railroad. This series even shows and depicts a lot of the things that he's talking about. Now, he says, by her being left alone, unprotected, with the male image destroyed. Notice what the goal is: destroy the male image. Being the biggest, strongest male slave out in front of the community, beat him to the point of almost being dead. Now, in his speech, he says, do not beat him to death, because that is really going to crush what you're trying to accomplish. You want to beat him to the point of almost being dead. You see what I'm saying? And he says, by leaving her left alone, unprotected, with the male image destroyed, the ordeal causes her to move from a psychological dependent state to a frozen independent state. Boosie came out with a song, didn't he say it?
Well, I heard that he has a real grasp on what's the foundation and the roots to the family, which is the female, regardless of what we've been taught or what people may say, the female is the root to every family. It's going to be, and you can take this to nature or anything. The mother is going to be the most influential person or being in any realm of the family, and she's going to be the nurturing. She's going to be doing the teaching. She's going to be doing the upbringing, pretty much laying down the laws and of morals and character and everything in the child, because she spends the most time with it. She feeds it. She does everything for it. So, he understood. Willie Lynch understood that, and he used it to his advantage. And the mother. When you hear Mother Bear, yep.
You know what I mean? Boosie came out with a song. And guess what? That is how we've seen the behavior take place. And here's what he says. He says, she will raise her male and female offsprings in reverse roles. So I want to pause there really quick before we get into some more that he talks about the female. He's not done with the female. But tell me what you heard from what was just said, from what Willie Lynch is indoctrinating, and what have you seen in the community as it relates to what he said?
If you look into any realm, whether it be the animal kingdom, the humans, or anything, the mother is always influential over the child. And, what he did was destroy the strength, the man got to understand his role, which is being the strength, the provider, and the protector of the family. And then the mother, she's going to be the one that actually makes the family. She's going to make everything, the living, the cooking, and not just laboring, don't get me wrong. She is the brains of the family, I have to give it to the woman, the woman is the brains of the family, and she's going to hold it together, and she's going to build a home for the family. And it's the man's job to provide. Well, if I can take the protector out, and I can destroy the male image, and now she doesn't have anything to protect her or anyone to help her out or protect what's going on, then she's going to have to be dependent upon the slave owner or society, as in today's modern day time, the government and things like that, and so that's pretty much what the concept that he came out with: destroy the male image, which is being done today. He's destroying the male image to where now today, and I'll just say in the Black society, I can't really speak for anywhere else or any other race, but in the Black culture, the male image is being destroyed. The male image is not looked upon as a man. The female, the penitentiary, and even the men themselves don't look like, they got a misconception of what a man is. Now it's all about finances. If he doesn't have a bag, if he doesn't have money and things like that, the female doesn't want anything to do with him, and it's vice versa. If the female doesn't have the things that a male wants, as far as the physical attributes and things like that, she's pretty much disposable. So it plays all into today, 2021, and the male image is totally to a man in the Black community. Everybody really looks towards and says, "Oh man, it ain't no men in the community. The men ain't men no more. Men ain't providing, and they're being stripped of everything that they have. And just like what this to say with the slave owner, if he stripped you of all your power, he stripped you of your manhood, if he embarrassed you in front of your family, put feathers on them and set them afire, and even some of the men, they would tie them up and tie them to a pole and rape them in front of their family and everything.
Yeah, and it looks like we may have lost Kalonji for a second. I'm sure he'll be back in just a minute to jump back into it. So, again, he's talking about the destruction of the male image. And so, I want to fast forward and give a modern day application to what he's talking about there when he talks about the destruction of the male image. Well, think about this. What role does mass incarceration? And I think he's back. Yeah, there we go. He's back. So you jumped out for just a second. But I was want to talk about mass incarceration. I know you were talking about the male image being destroyed. What role did mass incarceration play in that?
Oh, it played a major role, like you said, once slavery was over, and they left it in there that, in the 13th Amendment, that if you was a felon or been convicted of a crime, that we still could put you into slavery. You could do little as spit on the ground, and they would give you a charge and send you to prison. You could look a white lady in the eyes, and you go to jail and you go to prison, and it just
Emmett Till.
right. You just keep going and going on from there. Things progressed. And when the crack came in the '80s, it was a perfect situation to
Wrong drugs, Reagan.
massively incarcerate many black men. You got black men looking for jobs and things that they couldn't get, and you put them in a situation to where they have to do something to feed their family. And you got one side is saying, the black woman is saying, well, we need a man to make money. We need a man to provide and things like that. And then you're saying, well, the male is over here saying, well, I can't provide for my family because I can't get a job. I'm being discriminated against and things. So, the fastest route to that is selling these drugs. That's a fast route. Now, don't get me wrong. That's no excuse. But when you put in situations and you put in systematically put in positions to where you have to either sink or swim, most people are going to choose to swim, regardless of what it means, And then it goes all the way back to love for self. If you don't have any self-love, then you will do anything that it takes, to try to survive, even if it means putting your life in jeopardy,
Yeah, and I don't know that our people understand that. When I say our people, I'm talking specifically about black and brown people. With the prison population being disproportionately filled with black and brown people,
right?
Even though you've got the economic issues in specifically the poorer communities, you had all that happened. You mentioned a little bit about the war on drugs and crack and all that stuff that happened, because there was no economic opportunities. And you mentioned earlier about your family, man. That's one of the things that is so great about what your family decided to do during that time, because they provided an outlet for what was going on in the community.
The thing about it is when you was mentioning, the welfare and things again.
That is the goal. But a lot of people call Kanye West crazy when he said, hey, we got to do away with the 13th Amendment. A lot of people called him crazy for that. But see, it's under the 13th Amendment that allowed him to start the process of creating laws that made it criminal to be black. So, you even fast forward, you got the crime bill that was signed by Bill Clinton right there from our own state, right? From the great state of Arkansas. He signed this into law. And guess who it impacted? Disproportionately, it impacted black males. You have also in the 70s, where we got the Reagan era. You got in the 70s, you've got welfare that comes into play, right? Well, what was one of the requirements in order for you to qualify for welfare? Not to mention the fact that they're starting the projects, the housing projects, which started literally as a project. Something that they were testing out to see how a system would work. Put them in close quarters. Let's see how they react. But then you got welfare that comes about. And one of the requirements for welfare is that in order for a female to qualify or a woman to qualify for it, the male couldn't be present in the home.
People would say, well, what do they got to do with Willie Lynch? Well, that's just another form of dependency on a system that's designed to keep you stagnant and keep the family separated and everything. Is the very thing Willie Lynch was doing, but it's in a normal state. It's a modern day slavery, as you said. So
when will we realize unity is what breaks the curse of Willie Lynch?
Pretty much are comfortable and like what's going on. I mean, I just got to be straight up with it. They like what's going on. They like the lifestyle they're living. They like the freedom of basically living life however they want to live it, and not regards to your brother or your sister. It's a dog-eat-dog world in the black community now. There's no brotherly love. There's no sisterly love. It's all about me, myself, and I. I'm trying to get a bag, and if you getting in my way, I'm gonna lay you down for it. Or if I got to take yours to get it, that's how it is. But the
Yep.
main thing is, even with the brothers and everybody, because some people say, well, how can you say that everything is happening right now in this modern day slavery and everything, and people are successful? But
Man,
it's
when will
crazy.
people realize the power of unity? And that specifically is something that we struggle with in our own community. Willie Lynch laid it out perfectly. He said it in his own speech. Reverse the roles, break up the family unit, pit their differences all against them, and then all of a sudden it'll control its own self. He said, and I quote, "We created an orbiting cycle that turns on its own axis forever unless a phenomenon occurred to reshift the position of the male and the female savages." That's what he said. That's a quote. That's from his speech. That's page 3 now. I'm giving you another segment of what he's saying there.
Can't reach back, and try to bring that unity amongst their people is doing the community no good. I ain't gonna hate on nobody or say that, I hate that these brothers are getting money and things like that, but the knowledge of it and everything is no good to the people. you know it's just like, it's all gonna take knowledge, wisdom, and understanding. Just knowledge of something is not gonna really help anybody, because people can have knowledge and not do anything with it, or choose to ignore it. If you ain't got the wisdom to use it and understanding on what it means and what it represents, then it's no good. So, the Willie Lynch letter and everything, I can have knowledge of it just like a package of cigarettes.
Yep.
And good and well that it's on the package. It said this thing right here could cause cancer. And you could have uncles, you can have aunties and everything that's died from cancer and everything. So you have the knowledge of what a cigarette does, but it doesn't stop you from firing one up every day.
That's right, man. And it requires a certain level of discipline too. So, you mentioned several things, man, that are important. And I think that we really need to highlight, man. You talked about, when people talk about getting that bag and things like that, right? And they'll get it by any means, what I mean, especially in our community, but not even realizing that what we're doing as far as a behavior structure goes,
A successful people that
is we're pacifying the true divisions that are in the neighborhood for the people. You know what I mean? We're not
right.
realizing that unity is the way to be able to overcome everything that is designed. See, that was the original intentional design. I want you to understand too, and people, those who are not as invested in understanding what God's will is and what He wants to lay out. When I understand that what Willie Lynch was doing, he was reverse engineering what's laid out in Scripture. He was taking it, reverse engineering it, and indoctrinating it into society.
Right.
It's right there in Scripture. If you go read it in Scripture, you'll read exactly what he was doing. He was taking it, reverse engineering it, using it as a system and a method of control. He said it will control itself if we do it right. Revolving axis that'll turn on its own is what he said. That if we do it right, it'll do this. And we play into the exact axis that he was mentioning. We're there turning it. We're there flipping the wheel ourselves. You know what I mean? And so I think it's important that people start to understand what we're discussing in this and understand what Willie Lynch was laying out. So that way, if we can understand it, we stand over it, we accept it as truth, we can accept that, hey, this is what our society was built on. Now, we're going to take a moral compass standpoint and say, this is not the right way that we want to operate as a human family. I'm not even talking about the divisions that we've chosen to use to divide ourselves. We're doing Willie Lynch's work for him when we are dividing ourselves. But if we can truly understand as a human family, this is how we need to proceed going forward, then we can start that process of moving beyond Willie Lynch. But we've got to first come to the realization and be honest with one another and say, hey, look, when we see blatant racism that's playing itself out, or we even see interpersonal racism that's playing out online, these people that have now become comfortable in social media and things like that, of saying and doing whatever they want to do. This is not, someone said it best. Trump didn't make America racist. He made it comfortable for racists to be open in the public. America was racist way before that. So I absolutely dispute the words of our vice president and of Tim Scott, who is the only black Republican senator in the Senate. I refute those words when they say that America is not a racist country. Well, what point did we stop being that? Because we were established upon that. It was purposefully chosen to go to the banks of West Africa and grab the darker complected people, bring them back and put them into bondage. That was a purpose. So now that we know that, we have to be honest with that in order for us to overcome and move forward from that. You see what I'm saying?
Right.
So, that goes back to what I was talking about earlier. People say, oh, that was years ago. Those were, my ancestors. They did those things. I'm not a part of that. Or, I've never been a slave. You don't even realize the modern day slave is mind control. That's what they're after. We are continuing to mentally perpetuate the same psychological cycles. Willie Lynch called it psychological and physical. We're continuing that same psychological pattern, thus putting ourselves in physical slavery.
Right, brother. That's definitely right.
And I'm gonna give a little something else. I want to play a real clip here. This is something from some teachings that Brother Ishmael Muhammad has been laying out around this whole topic. And there's quite a few things that he's laying out. And so as we move forward in our conversation, I want to talk about, and move forward and talk about maybe some solutions that we can come up with. And I think this is going to help us to get into it. So I want to play this little clip, and then I'll give you the opportunity to respond to what you're seeing there. So let me play this clip. Let me know if you can't hear it.
He is born with a predetermined idea. It's the will of God.
Can you hear it?
So he was permitted to make a people. So he put that idea of dominion in the people that he made, so they cannot help themselves. And that's why, in order for them to escape the consequences of what their own nature has produced, they have to be born again and destroy that idea of supremacy.
So that's the clip. Talk to me. What did you observe from what did you hear from Minister Ishmael?
Well, I believe that, he was saying that, it's instilled in you, and the things that's instilled in us, that we have to bring forth those things, to society and to our people. It's kind of like, what I was saying earlier about how Willie Lynch was trying to implement woman, raise her children to the things that he wanted done. And then he said that if he could get the woman to raise her children to be good slaves and good producers and good laborers, that it will revolve on a continuous cycle.
Yeah.
And, I think that the brother was saying, we have to go back and start with our children, and to get them to a point to where they're not just revolving this culture that we live in every day.
Agreed, man. And there's a quote that I want to read. You posted this yesterday, man, and it really stood out to me. This is a quote from Booker T. Washington, but it says, "Success is to be measured not so much by the position that one has reached in life as by the obstacles which he has overcome." So in that quote, there was so many powerful things, because as Brother Ishmael is talking about, in order for us to overcome this, we have got to get around this idea of supremacy as a nation, as a country, as a people. We've got to get rid of those two ideas that were indoctrinated as a part of what Lynch laid out. We've got to get rid of the inferiority. So, for people that are in our community, oh, things are never going to change. Things are never going to, we're never going to come up. We're never going to do this and that, that oppressed mindset that people have. We have got to stop thinking in that manner. And also, on the other side of that coin, on the other side of that token, those who have been in a privileged position in this nation since they've been born also have to start the process of analyzing supremacy. We've got to start to move forward from that idea of supremacy in order to move towards inclusion, a goal for a nation. Otherwise, we know what happens to a house divided. What does the word say about a house divided? You know what I mean?
It would surely fall.
Right. And this is another clip, man. I'm gonna play this one real quick. This is talking about, just something about healing the divide, but talking about the one race, man. You know what I mean? And this is, out of one blood.
He has made from one blood every nation of men. Now look at this. To dwell on the face of the earth, and has determined their pre-appointed times and the boundaries of their dwellings, so that they should seek the Lord in the hope that they might grope for him. Wow. And find him, though he is not far from each one of us. For in him we live and move and have our being, as also some of your own poets have said, for we are also his offspring.
I'll respond to that, man. Give me a little bit of the context. I know this may be your first time hearing that, but respond to what Brother Ishmael is laying out there.
From what I can get, we have to get back to what we know is seeking God, seeking guidance, seeking a responsibility and a moral foundation from which we came. It's already in us, but it has to be awakened, and then it has to be sought after, yearned for, as he said, to grope, and to seek God. It has to be a yearning and a concern of our people, to get back on the path of spirituality, which we pretty much, I would say, started just putting to the side or trying to decipher this and that, I would just say, in a religious setting, if you're going to teach your children about religion and things like that, you have to tell them the truth, you have to lay it out to where some black kids don't even know that the Bible states that Jesus was a black man. Jesus was a person of color. He was a person of color. I'm gonna break the conversation that you may not even remember this, but you posed the question, man. This has been years and years ago, and it stuck with me because it challenged me to do my own research, and it challenged me to really understand what the truth is. And you're absolutely right. We've got to get to the truth. You said, why did they change the names? That was the question that you threw out there, man. I think this was back when you were going through, through your ministry school and things like that, and you were doing some study, man, and I could tell it was working, man. And I defended the name. I stood on the side of the slave master and defended the use of the name out of ignorance. And then the question you kept asking, even when I threw the defense out there, you said, but why change the name though? Why is the name changed? You understand what I'm saying? Right.
and
not only the name, the image.
Do you hear me?
The image says hair of wool and feet of bronze.
What does that tell you?
How did it become pale skin and long stringy hair?
And here's the thing that we know. We know that the world, according to all ancient history that we have, if we look at Lucy from here in South America, that's the oldest skull that's been discovered here in a cave down in Brazil. If we look at, over in the actual continent of Africa, we know that the oldest person there. If we look at Cheddar Man back over in the British man, the oldest person there, all of the people that have been discovered according to science show that they were a darker or melanated people of the planet. Now, that being said, out of one blood, God created many different hues, as the Holy Quran speaks to the fact that there are many different hues in the human family. then how do we get to this divide? How do we get to this point? And I think Brother Ishmael lays it out again. He talks about this, man. This is about coming up in our thinking. We've got to start that process of coming up in our thinking and base it on truth. Just like you mentioned Jesus, Yeshua is the Hebrew name. Isha is the Aramaic name of what it's referred to. But yet we use Jesus. But a lot of people don't know that one of the very first ships that sailed in the transatlantic slave trade was named Jesus, called the Good Ship Jesus as the nickname. And Sir Francis Drake, whom we probably all heard of from history class, sailed on that good ship, went to the West Banks of Africa and told people, here's your savior. Loaded him up to a ship, and guess what he did to him? You see what I'm saying? So even that's why I said, man, I thank you for that conversation, because to this day, I am challenged every time I hear that name, because that is the slave master's oppression. Willie Lynch said it himself. We must create a multiplicity of illusions in order to keep this system going. So we must continue to, as you mentioned, change the image of and the likeness of who the true Messiah was, who Yeshua, the one who shall save, which is what it means in Hebrew, who he was. They had to change that. But we must start to come to the truth. We must start recognizing the truth. Let me play this clip really quick, man, and I'll get your thoughts on this one.
We have to come up now in our thinking, because immature thinking and speaking baby language in the season of knowledge, wisdom, and understanding of God will not allow us to move forward. You'll get stuck in yesterday.
So, man, I think that's a perfect key up. I want a part of this conversation. Like I said, I wanted to talk about, some solutions and where we go from here. How do we go from here as a community? And I think Brother Ishmael laid it out perfectly, man. We've got to really come up in our thinking. But what are your thoughts on what Brother Ishmael laid out there?
I mean, he's definitely right, It's like what we were kind of talking about before we started here, man. It's have to come up into the knowledge, wisdom, and understanding, as the brother said, of the truth. There's nothing worse. The truth is nothing worse to a person. And once you believe the lie so much, the truth really hurts. And I don't want people to take me, as a prejudiced person and things like that. At some point in time, I have to admit, I was in a prejudiced state, but just through knowledge, wisdom, and understanding, of who I am and everything that goes around and with that, I had to, and I had to indulge. I actually indulged with other races and things for myself, because a lot of things I was going off of was just hearsay.
Yeah.
And all I knew was, that the other races were terrible. They were bad. They were no good, and they didn't want to see me prosper or move forward or anything like that. And I came to find out that wasn't quite so. There are bad seeds and apples out there, and there's a lot of things that's been done to our people and everything. But there are some good people out there, in all races. So, I don't want people to, I'm kind of harsh at how I speak and things like that. So, don't get it confused with, man, he sounds like a prejudiced person, and things like that. But yeah, man, we have to step up, and just stop, like you said, stop having baby conversations, stop holding things back, thinking that, we may offend this one, we may offend that one, and speak the truth to these children, because they need to know. It's the only way we can break the cycle, It's the only way that we can break these generational curses, that, and understand that we're not just laborers, we're entrepreneurs, we're people that we're thinkers, we're scientists, we're architects, we're doctors, we're lawyers, we're all of that, all wrapped up in one. And if we can ever get to that point right there, that we are better than just laborers, we're better than just football players and basketball players and entertainers and things like that, we are really the people of the planet.
Resilient.
You know,
Yeah,
we're the people.
resilient.
We're the original people of the planet. So everything that came after us was just an afterthought. You know, I mean, everything that came, we created. You know, and you know,
Yeah.
I just don't want to go deep into depth into that because that's a whole nother podcast. You know,
You hear me?
but
You hear me?
man, we it's just something that we have to put forth because, like you said, right now we're defeated. You know, we have a defeated spirit. You know, and the Willie Lynch Syndrome is alive and well, and is sunk and it's embedded into our people. You know, and we only think that we good for one thing. You know, and that's just being black. But the definition of being black and African Americans is a totally different thing of what it used to be. Now you know, if you're not cool, if you're not slanging drugs, if you don't have women, if you don't have men by the multiple men or multiple women and things like that, if you're not a gangster, if you're not on the opposite side of positivity, then you're not black.
Yeah.
And you know, we have to redefine what being African American really is, you know, to our people and to our kids. You know, nowadays. I'm sorry, but you know, but nowadays, you know, people just think that you lame. You know, if you're a smart guy, if you're smart, you lame, man. If you want to be a business owner, you lame. You know, so we have to get away from that concept, man, and start educating these kids to a point to where they understand that you are a superior being as well. You know, you don't have to take superiority from another race to claim your superiority. You know?
Absolutely. It starts with you.
Exactly.
Starts with self. Yeah, man. You mentioned there's several really good nuggets that you mentioned in there, man. First off, thank you for your transparency because I'm with you, man. I can relate completely to a lot of the different things that you mentioned as you stated what you stated just then. One is, you know, as you start to really truly understand what Willie Lynch indoctrinated and what he ingrained, you really start to have that empathy because
right, he gave us our culture. The culture that we live right now is Willie Lynch's culture. You know, he gave it to us, and we're living it out.
That's exactly what Yolanda mentioned in the comments too, man. That's exactly what she said, and she's absolutely right about that. Even when we get our own culture, I'll give you an example. Blues, for example. You know how blues started? Blues started as a music to really educate people. It was used to spread a message, right? Music, the musical culture, you know, a lot of those different things. Hip hop was started to spread a message, to be able to bring about revolution during those days of oppression. But guess what the enemy did? He came and took over all of those industries, everything that we created. And so it became a part of what the enemy does. You see what I'm saying? And it's Willie Lynch syndrome. It's exactly what it is. He comes in, he controls the mind, he controls the music, he controls the message. If you can control the message, same thing what happens with media. If you can control the message, you can control the people. You see what I'm saying? And so it's important that we start with ourselves. You mentioned, man, look, I had to really seek and find to understand, you know, wait a minute, all these people may not be like this. Yeah, I've been taught, and you know, the things that I see in this society, in this world, teach me certain ways. But hey, let me find out for my own self. Let me have my own experience. And now all of a sudden, wait a minute, okay, hold on, maybe just maybe I was wrong about these things. Now let me see it from a different light. And now that I have that different perspective, I can operate under truth. You see what I'm saying? And so, you know, just like you mentioned, you know, as Minister Ishmael mentioned, out of one blood, many. You know what I mean? That's directly from Acts. If we go to Acts 17, that's right there in Acts. And it talks about, you know, that if God fashioned and created the first human being, that means that everything that came after that was also human. You see what I'm saying? Even if an individual was grafted out of another individual, you see what I'm saying? Or if, you know, due to lack of exposure, their skin started to lighten up. This is all still one blood. And when we start to realize the human family, we can start to realize self in that. And if we can realize self, we'll understand how valuable we are, and the fact that the slave master and his mindset, his mentalities, his ways of thinking, and his thought patterns can't control you if you know who you are and how precious and valuable you are. But that's it. I think that's the start, man. That's the start that we've got to do is we've really got to start to examine who we are and learn self.
Yeah, I mean that's definitely where you got to start at if you're talking about solutions to breaking the cycle. Is to start with self. I started out on a mission, and I was so excited and hyped about the revealing of the truth that I wanted to spread it. I wanted to spread it to the world, and everybody was not ready.
They're not, man. Talk to me about
ready. And I understand, I had to understand, through studying and things like that. It's just like a baby, baby, you got to start him out on the milk. You can't start him out on solid foods and the hard truth. You got to give them a sprinkle of the truth right now and a little sprinkle of it there and just reveal some things because I can tell you from experience, too much of the truth at one time can turn you into a hateful person, and in my
comes with sorrow, and that what the word said?
Exactly, and in my youth, I took on a challenge I got so much of that information given to me at one time and it wasn't fueled and filtered right, and I went on a mission just to show the opposite race or the white man or whatever you want to call it that I was not you wasn't gonna buck break me. This one buck you ain't gonna be able to break, and I'm gonna do everything I can to show you, whether it be take what I want, do what I want, show out whatever, and I was willing to suffer the consequences in anything because all I wanted to do was show that I wasn't my ancestors, and I wanted to pay you back. I wanted to pay you back for what you done in a physical sense, but just through knowledge, wisdom, and understanding, man, I keep saying, it was a wonderful thing that, God took the time to just set me down and give me some insight and give me some patience and discipline, on the whole subject and everything. But man, starting with self, I would say, would be the first solution, and getting around like-minded people, you need to get around like-minded people at all times and understand that you may have to go alone if you can't find them, being in the, even in your own home, you may not be able to implement the things you want to in your own home because you may live with family or your mother or your brother and things like that. And a lot of times you can't change another person, so you got to understand for yourself that you may have to move around or you may have to just go on this journey alone. And as an example, you can bring people in, or people and sometimes people may never come in. Like I said earlier, people get comfortable with their lifestyle. They get comfortable with not having to answer to the universe and not have to answer to morals, character, and value in this world. That what we need to, try to make a change. And they just like a lackadaisical lifestyle, And, if I want to smoke weed, if I want to pimp, if I want to prostitute, if I want to sleep with this person or that person or sell drugs or gang bang or whatever, that's how I like it. I don't want to have to think. I don't want to have to show discipline, and it's just a lot of immature, like the brother just said, a lot of immaturity that's going around that sometimes you're going to have to understand you may not be able to do anything about that. You can't save the world. But they say if you want to eat an elephant, man, you got to do it one bite at a time.
You hear me,
man? That's the only way you can eat it. So, we can start one step at a time, a little bit here and a little bit there. If you can reach one person, that's fine. But you have to start with self first.
Yeah, that's wisdom right there, man. That's wisdom. Wisdom requires restraint. And they say the old saying is sometimes elevation requires separation. So in order for you to go to that next level, it may require you to separate yourself from certain things, certain people, certain ways of thinking in order for you to truly elevate and come to that next plane. And as you mentioned,
Yes,
man,
sir.
you can't take a baby and expect them just to go out there and walk, right? You got to take baby steps, and that's the thing that I've been appreciative of with doing this Modern Day Slave podcast is that it's a slow walk, it's a slow journey. That's why I took 3 episodes just to focus on the Willie Lynch syndrome, because I know that it's a much needed conversation and much needed talk. And this, this I could even link this into being the 4th of that 3-part series. But I wanted to start with the foundation by laying down what do we mean by modern day slave? What is the definition of slave? What is the definition of slavery? Now let's examine a little bit of some context around slavery itself and application before I even dive in and talk about the ramifications. So, like I said, I'm 7. This is now the 8th episode. I'm 7 episodes in, and it's a slow grind. But I am truly thankful that God has given me the wisdom, the knowledge, and the understanding of how to lay it out in a manner that allows people to come along the journey with us. And, as a part of this conversation today, man, I can't thank you enough for stepping into the arena. As I mentioned at the very beginning before everyone jumped on, I feel like this is something that we really need. We've got to continue this conversation because, there's much more that you and I can speak, in regards to this topic that'll really help people to truly understand how precious, how valuable they are. And I hope that if you took anything from the conversation that me and the brother Kalonji have had today on the line, that you take just how precious and how valuable you are in the sight of your creator. And if you don't know who your creator is, please just continue to have a curious mind and seek him, because you'll truly be exposed to what your enemy is trying to do to keep you under his control, when the reality is God has given you all the freedom that's available out there in the world.
Definitely, brother.
So I want to thank everyone that tuned in, the comments, the people that have joined. If you haven't already checked out the Modern Day Slave podcast, I would highly encourage you to jump over to bit.ly. So it's also in the comment section of this particular broadcast, but bit.ly/slave pod. That's bit.ly/SLAVEPOD. So jump onto that. That'll allow you to tune in and to be able to, see some of the upcoming episodes. I highly encourage you to also share this video as well as, the other videos. And then, any of the podcast episodes, please listen to those. Leave me comments. Let me know what your thoughts are. I'm highly open to, any feedback that you have, whether it be good, bad, or indifferent. I'm willing to learn and grow. Like I said, I appreciate Kalonji because I've had so many moments of growth with just some of the knowledge questions. I call them knowledge questions because he would throw a question out there and let people just respond, and then guide the conversation or allow the conversation to go to an organic place and really bring people to the truth. And that is the kind of knowledge that we really need in this time to really help people to understand who they truly are. So, Kalonji, man, I know there's a plug that you gave early at the very beginning of the broadcast. Give us that plug for the community as well, man, that you talked about a little bit earlier.
Yeah. Yeah, you can go to Family Community Outreach on Facebook. I think that's the best link to get you in, but it also is on Instagram. And, just come in. Basically what we do is we try to get our people to self-sufficiency in this world, whether it comes to, job interviews or being able to get into the work scene, or man, we feed the homeless, man. We do a lot of different things, but our basic goal is to, just get our people to a point to where we can succeed in this society, without having to go into the depths of hell to bring out, things that is not good for us, So, that's one thing. I have a group. I have a men's group on men. I have a men's group on Facebook called Manhood 101. For all the guys out there, it's a platform for you to come on there and discuss some things. I basically just post a lot of information and just show our kings and uprise and uplift our kings. To a point to where we can every day we can see another king doing something positive, another king making entrepreneur moves, and things like that. So senior kids over is kid friendly. It's for it's men only, and we're just trying to one step at a time, just trying to bring our people to a better state of living. That's what it's all about.
Yeah, indeed, man. And what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna drop the link to Manhood 101, man, because it's some really good conversation, man, and it's uplifting. We have a conversation. We don't always agree on everything that takes place in Manhood 101, and that's okay.
Right, that's what
because
it's all about.
Exactly. It's a safe space to allow us to have some conversation, man. And I just appreciate being a part of that group because the group really allows us to grow as men, man, and it's much needed in this world. So I'm gonna drop that link in the chat pod for us so that those who are looking for the group, you feel free to be able to join using the link that's dropped into the chat pod as well. So, man, this is
definitely, iron sharpens iron, man. Men, it's hard for men to have a disagreement without coming to blows or, threatening each other and things like that. But we have to get to a mature state to where we can agree to disagree, and we should be able to come together as one. If we all, whether you're a Christian or Muslim or atheist or whatever you are, if we all going for the same common goal, it don't really matter. It doesn't really matter where we go. It's all matter about where we going, not how we get there.
At the end of the day, man, there's going to be people from every different walk of life that's going to be there at the heaven's gates, and you are not going to be the one making the decision about who gets in. So some people say, oh, it's this person that's going to get in, or that people, or you got to do this and you got to do it. Man, look, the gate may be narrow, but there's going to be all walks of life that are going to be there, man. And this conversation is a start to a foot forward towards that kingdom that we're talking about building, man. Look, as Christ said, as it is in heaven, so it shall be here on earth, right? And we've got to start walking in that same principle that, even Yeshua laid out himself, the principles of what we do here. And look, man, Glenda said that Chief Benson, man, and I'm humbled by that comment, man. Said that he really enjoyed the conversation and the dialogue that we had tonight, man. I'm extremely humble. My heart goes out, man, for just knowing that the Reverend and all of his service that he's done to the community, that he listened into this, and man, he enjoyed the conversation. Man, we've got many more. We've got many more on the books that we got to have, because this is a much needed conversation, man. This is vital. It's important for all of us, man. So, man, my hat goes out to you. I can't thank you enough, Brother Kalonji, for jumping on and sharing your wisdom, your insight, your heart, and being transparent with the viewers, man. This really starts that process of helping us out to get to where we need to get to, man. Thank you, man. Good. Thank you for this.
Oh no, thank you, brother. Just for bringing me on, and having enough respect for me to hear what I got to say or hear my perspective on some things. I don't consider myself a person who knows everything or try to indulge in anything and everything. I just try to help where I can, and if I can help and bring light and influence to our people, man, I can do it. I'll try to do it any way I can. The main thing I love is just the truth. If the truth is what it is, then I'll go head and foot in, to reveal the truth. And it's just exciting to be able to pass it on. The truth does no good in a box. You got to open that box up and let it be revealed. As the word said, the truth shall set you free.
Man, you shall know the truth, and the truth shall set you free.
Exactly. So,
welcome to your freedom.
Exactly, man. And I hope we can do it again. This is like you said, this is the first time. It's the first time you're bringing on live. And and it's practice for me as well. My wife always says that what you're saying, I kind of like Jesus, and I don't want to take credit like I am Jesus, whatever, but I speak in parables, and
yeah,
I always think that a person should be able to catch what I'm saying, even though I'm not saying it to a point to where you can necessarily understand it. If you take some time, if you take a couple days or whatever you need, and go back and listen to what he's saying and really digest it, and you can say, "Oh, okay, I get it." But you have to be moving in the spirit. You know, you have to be in a open mind frame. You got to be in an open mind frame, to understand some people, or otherwise it'll just keep going over your head because you ain't receiving it in the first place.
1000%, man. And as you mentioned earlier, iron sharpens iron, and I'll end it with this, man. Look, the harvest is ripe, but the workers are few. And so, man, I appreciate you putting in the hard work on this tonight, man, because this, as you mentioned, this is a much needed and it's an important topic to really start the process of re-educating people, the human family, on how to truly come out of what we're seeing transpire in our world today. These are the times that have been prophesied about, man. For those that read, it's right there in the scripture. So you can recognize the signs of the times that we're in, just like Issachar, but people don't know that. And so it's important that we take the time to at least educate. If we can get just one, man, that's the goal. If we can get just one person, man, what does it say? He'll abandon the 99 and go after that one.
Right.
And this conversation, man, this community conversation has really been enlightening. It's been uplifting. It's really truly exposed what the truth is and the reality of the world that we live in today. And then also giving us a path forward, man. So please, if you've taken anything from our broadcast today, knowledge of self, start that process of really truly learning who you are. I know we're in the middle of a pandemic that's been going on for a period of time. And if anything, if it hasn't taught you how to truly understand and know who you are throughout this whole process, man, it's time to really start looking into who you are. So I'll end it with this, shalom, shalom, and assalamu alaikum to those who, speak of the languages, which means peace be upon you. And my brother Kalonji, man, look, peace be upon your household, blessings coming and flowing your way, man, and peace as you're on the road, man. I see you working. So, I really appreciate you having this conversation, man. Let's do it again, inshallah. God willing.
Yes, sir. Peace and blessings, King.
Peace.
I appreciate it.
Yes, sir. So there you have it, right? This is the first community conversation that we've had here. Episode number 8 is in the books. I wanted to give a few announcements really quick before I get out of here. But for those who haven't already seen it, I haven't posted a link just yet, but I am on Patreon now. It's Patreon.com/Nikia17. So you can find me there. Also, Step by Faith still has copies of my book, From Poverty to Prosperity, which talks a little bit about my childhood and growing up, in the south side of Nashville, Arkansas, but more about love, growth, and change. You can still get copies there online at stepbyfaith.com. That's stepbyfaith.com. And then also for those who want to know, all the different areas to where my podcast is at, let me drop a plug really quick for that. You can go to pod.fan. So that's pod.fan/Modern Day Slave Podcast. You can find all the different links there to enjoy previous episodes of the podcast. Again, I'm your host, Nikia Anderson. I want to thank you all for tuning in to this episode. This has been a great conversation for us to have. I really appreciate everyone for tuning in. Share, like, subscribe, and we'll see you next time. Until then, let me give you a little bit of outro music that I created by myself as well. The slave master loses the moment we start to recognize that we're on the plantation. When he continues to put his yoke of bondage out in plain sight for you, and you ignore it by not feeding into the trap that he's laid before you, you then win your freedom. Welcome to your freedom. Thank you for tuning in to another episode of the Modern Day Slave Podcast, where we expose the stumbling block that was placed by the slave master in order to keep the modern day slave under their yoke of bondage. You have just been freed. Welcome to your freedom.